G'day, I'm Paul. Pricing for the new BYD Shark, the plug-in hybrid ute from the Chinese manufacturer, has been leaked by the government. Whoops-a-days, so we've got all of those details now. I'm going to run you through all of that, plus a recap of everything we know so far about the BYD Shark. So we'll get right into it. Now, pricing was leaked on a government running costs website, and the reason I know that this pricing is correct is because they've now taken it down. Whenever they take that stuff down, it's always because someone has complained about it and it shouldn't have been up in the first place, but we managed to get some screenshots, a little bit of video recording of it as well to relay that information to you. So the pricing for the BYD Shark in Mexico, where it's already been revealed and launched, is around the $85,000 mark in Australian dollars. So it's kind of a little bit more expensive than what I thought it was going to be. If you put something like the new Ford Ranger plug-in hybrid into perspective, that's probably going to sit somewhere between Wildtrak and Raptor in terms of pricing, and I thought that BYD would kind of price this around there, but they've actually gone for a much cheaper price. So this is listed at a recommended retail price of $68,000. Now that price, when you add on road costs, according to this government website, comes out to $77,000, just over $77,000. So that includes stuff like your registration, stamp duty, etc., etc. And while this does say that it's for the Shark base, we actually think this is probably going to be for the upper spec model. So that means you're going to get a vehicle with all the fruit potentially for under $80,000 drive away. And I'll recap the specs in a second, but that is remarkable value for money when you consider what this thing is going to be able to do. Just having a look at these specs quickly, battery range according to this is 100 kilometres, which we already knew. That is pretty decent when you look at the energy consumption. So according to this website, they've said that the energy consumption for that vehicle is going to be 26 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometres. So what you've got to consider here is that unlike a fully electric vehicle where you're just lugging around a battery and the frame of the vehicle and the body and all that sort of stuff, here with a plug-in hybrid, you're lugging around the battery, the internal combustion engine, and then all of the components that you need for that internal combustion engine with a fuel tank and all of those things. So there is a fair bit of weight added on there. And given that this has a range of 100 kilometres, it is a fairly decent sized battery as well. So 26 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometres is around 10 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometres more than what you would get in something like a Tesla Model Y. So this is going to be a fairly heavy vehicle on the road. It's going to be close to that 3-ton mark, I suspect, once they sort of add everything into there. So that is just something worth keeping in mind, but it does mean that you can actually run it as an electric vehicle without switching on that internal combustion engine. According to this website as well, if you look at this over a 5-year analysis, running costs of under $200 a month, and that also includes things like your fuel, annual taxes, depreciation and maintenance. So over a 5-year period, that comes out to just over $60,000 in terms of running costs, with a depreciation of $48,892. The depreciation on these vehicles comes by standard calculation that the government does for things like leases. So that's all sort of fairly standard stuff. And if you want to put that into perspective, recently we tested the Ford Ranger Tremor. So that is like an off-road special version of the Ranger. That's a $69,000 car, and that is pretty basic. It's based on the sport grade. Doesn't really have all that much in terms of features inside the cabin. Yes, it can go off-road and all that sort of stuff, but it is the 2-litre diesel. So to think that this is going to be priced at under the cost of the Ranger Tremor, I think gives you an idea of how sharp BYD wants the pricing to be and how many they think they can actually sell in Australia. You've got to remember that next year we have the NVES, which is the emissions laws that are coming in. It's basically going to fine manufacturers, giving them less incentive to bring vehicles that aren't electric to the country. So that means that BYD looks at this situation, knows that they're going to have to put their prices up because car companies aren't just going to take on these costs, they're going to pass them on to consumers. And I think they are going to sell an absolute stack of these, especially to things like governments, fleets, councils, that kind of stuff. So it is pretty exciting stuff. So just a recap there in terms of the BYD Shark in general and what we're expecting from it. So 1.5 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine, 2 electric motors and a Blade battery. So the Blade battery is an LFP battery that they've fitted to other BYD vehicles. State-of-the-art stuff and fairly sort of standard battery technology in these cheaper electric cars on the market today. This vehicle is interesting because the internal combustion engine can work in a number of different modes. It can actually work to either just charge the battery, which then runs the electric motors, or in some instances it can actually drive the vehicle through the internal combustion engine as opposed to having to route it through the inverter and then the battery system. There will be no direct driving of the rear wheels though. They will always be serviced by an electric motor. There is no physical sort of drive line, a traditional drive line down the center of the car that you find in most modern vehicles today that are in this segment. On the performance front, battery pack is a 30 kilowatt hour battery, so really reasonably sized battery there to get you that 100 kilometers worth of driving range, and 0 to 100 of 5.7 seconds, which is fairly quick for a dual cab ute like this. 320 kilowatts of combined power output. That's 170 kilowatts and 310 newton meters for the electric motor at the front, and then 150 and 340 newton meters for the electric motor on the rear axle. So I said in the previous video that we shot on the BYD Shark, I will be keen to test this at its capacities, because the issue that you're going to find with vehicles like this, a plug-in hybrid never uses all of its battery. Even if the car tells you the battery is empty, there's always some reserve in there, because they use that reserve to give you that punchy acceleration that a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged engine never will. So it will be interesting to see what happens once you are loaded up to 2.5 tonne with towing and you've got all of that payload in the tray and you are driving up something like a long hill or trying to do an overtake. Once your battery does get low and you're relying just on that internal combustion engine and reserve capacity, I feel like it's going to struggle, but I am happy to be proven wrong, and that is something that we will absolutely be testing on this, and also the Ford Ranger plug-in hybrid when that finally launches as well. And just to recap, in terms of sizing, figures from China say that it's just under 5.5 metres long and just under 2 metres wide and a little under 2 metres tall as well. So pretty standard there in terms of dimensions. Nothing too crazy, but it is going to be on the bigger side, and it should mean that you get a decent amount of room inside the cabin. And it'll be interesting to see how they've done packaging here with the battery system and the motors, because all of this stuff takes up a lot of room and you still want to be able to use this as a utility. We do know things like payload and towing, so the brake towing capacity is going to be limited to 2.5 tonnes, which is a tonne short of what you're going to find in other utes in this segment around that price bracket. Ground clearance, they claim, is 282 mil, but I don't know if that's a running clearance or a ground clearance. We'll have to wait and see, because that is quite high off the ground. You don't really want to be that high off the ground in terms of aerodynamics. You want to be a little closer without compromising your off-road ability. 280 mil is sort of Raptor spec in terms of its off-road ability. Payload, 835 kilos, so nothing too crazy, but it's going to be enough to do most of the work that this vehicle will be designed to do. It's not that 1 tonne of payload. Probably not a bad thing either, because if you are doing a private novated lease, you have to have a payload of under 1 tonne. So this being under that 1 tonne marker means that you're going to be eligible for the tax savings from the FBT exemption. You're also going to be eligible for a private novated lease. And according to the figures from China as well, the tray has a capacity of 1,450 litres, and that's really semantics, because it's going to depend how it's laid out, and that's something that we will definitely be testing when the vehicle launches. But it's inside the cabin where it's kind of the most impressive. You've got a 10.25-inch digital instrument cluster, a giant 12.8-inch infotainment screen. It really is a ute that appears to be for the driver here and making it sort of a comfortable place to be seated. Now, I'm keen for your thoughts. Do you reckon that this ute is targeted more as a lifestyle vehicle or a trade vehicle? The reason I ask that is we got a lot of comments over the weekend when this story went live that a lot of people saying that this is primarily a lifestyle vehicle. And when you think about it, look, a lifestyle vehicle is kind of half the utes that are on the road at the moment. I don't use my ute for any sort of trade-related things. Well, I have put a bike in it once and a spare tyre once as well, but outside of that, I haven't done anything else with it. So I think a lot of people are buying these dual cab utes for that lifestyle thing where you can go away on the weekend, do a bit of camping, do a bit of off-road driving, but you can also use it for work-related stuff if you want to. Do you think that this is more a lifestyle vehicle than a trade vehicle? Let me know what you reckon in the comments section below there. And are you going to be buying one of these to improve your tax position? Because if you can get one of these as a private novated lease under this plug-in hybrid FBT exemption through work, I think a lot of people are going to find value in being able to depreciate a 70, almost $80,000 vehicle to reduce their tax position. So let me know what you reckon about the pricing here that has been leaked for the BYD Shark. Do you think the pricing is good? Do you reckon they could have been a little sharper on the pricing? Let me know in the comments section below. This is just around the corner from being officially announced for Australia with all the details sort of lobbying, but I am glad we've been able to get early access to this. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like it, you share it with your mates, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon as well. And let us know in the comments section, what do you want us to test when this finally launches? But until next time, take it easy.